Okay, I want you to be completely honest with yourself for a second. If I offered you $10 right now, today, or $100 tomorrow, which one are you taking? Obviously, it feels like a total no-brainer, right? You wait just 24 hours and boom, you get 10 times the cash. But what if that time gap was a whole year? Or what if that $10 was actually a delicious slice of chocolate cake staring you right in the face and the $100 was your long-term health? Well, this right here is the fundamental dilemma of delayed gratification. It's literally the central problem we grapple with every single day. From, trying to save our hard-earned paychecks to just logging off social media so we can finally get some work done.
So, I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for this explainer, because today we are going to break down the actual science behind why we give into those immediate impulses so often. And, more importantly, we'll look at how we can scientifically level up our focus. We're not just throwing around generic habit advice here. We are diving deep into the intersection of classic psychology and cutting-edge neuroscience to see how self-control works at a biological level. So, let's dive right in.
Here's a quick roadmap of what we're covering today. 1. The science of self-control. 2. Your hot and cool brain. 3. Meditation and neural networks. 4. Rewiring for better attention. And finally, number 5. Strategies to master your mind.
All right, part 1, the science of self-control.
Our journey actually kicks off at Stanford University back in the 1960s and 70s. You've probably heard of this one, psychologist Walter Mischel and the famous Stanford Marshmallow Experiment. Mischel and his team gave a bunch of 4-year-olds a seemingly simple choice. You can eat this one marshmallow right now, or if you can wait 15 minutes, you get a second one. Well, get this. Shockingly, only about 30% of those kids were actually able to hold out for the full 15 minutes to earn that second marshmallow. 30%! A few just gobbled it up immediately, but most of them really tried their hardest to wait. They were covering their eyes, singing little songs, kicking the desk, but ultimately, 70% caved to the temptation before the timer went off. Now here is where the study gets truly fascinating. Mischel didn't just test these kids and say, okay, bye. A decade later, he actually tracked down the original subjects. And it turns out that one single childhood metric, just the ability to delay gratification for a marshmallow, predicted massive life advantages decades later. The kids who managed to wait ended up scoring significantly higher on their SATs, and they developed much better emotional coping skills as teenagers. And today, those original kids are in their 40s and 50s. And the data shows the better delayers are still excelling. They have higher self-worth, they handle stress way better, and they are significantly less prone to drug abuse. I mean, willpower literally shapes our long-term health and success. Which brings us to section 2, your hot and cool brain. So we absolutely know willpower is a game changer. But what's actually happening inside our heads when we're trying to resist that marshmallow or a cigarette or, constantly checking our phones? To explain this, psychologists Metcalfe and Mischel introduced this really helpful hot and cool framework back in 1999. Think of it like this. You have a hot system, which is based deep in your limbic system. It is emotional, reflexive, and super impulsive. It's the system that fuels basic drives like hunger and instant desire. When you see a fresh donut and your mouth starts watering, yeah, that is your hot system firing on all cylinders. But then you have the cool system. This is centralized right in your prefrontal cortex. This system is cognitive, it's reflective, and it's totally goal-oriented. It cares about your long-term plans. So self-control is really just your cool system stepping in and exerting enough influence to override the automatic urges of that hot system. Moving on to part 3, meditation and neural networks. So if self-control is all about having a strong, cool prefrontal system, the big question is, can we actively strengthen it? To figure that out, researchers at the Lapate lab brought 40 long-term mindfulness meditators into an fMRI scanner. They wanted to see how extensive mental training actually impacts these exact prefrontal control networks. Let's look at the specific brain regions involved here. First, there's the posterior cingulate cortex, or PCC, which is a region heavily involved in mind wandering. And then there's the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex, or RLPFC. That's a key part of your cool system, responsible for shifting your attention and self-awareness. And guess what? The scans revealed that the long-term meditators had significantly stronger functional connectivity between these two precise brain regions. When you compare those 40 long-term meditators to the 124 control participants who had never meditated, the differences are pretty mind-blowing. First off, the meditators had a physically lower respiration rate. But biologically, as we just saw, that PCC to RLPFC connectivity was much, much stronger. And in terms of real-world behavior,
Well, the researchers actually tracked them over a week using text message experience sampling. The meditators reported significantly higher subjective attention to their daily tasks. Their self-reported everyday focus was just noticeably sharper.
Okay, let's look at section 4, rewiring for better attention. So how exactly does a stronger connection in the prefrontal cortex translate to better focus for us in the real world? Well, it all comes down to something called the default mode network, or DMN. Think of the DMN as the brain's ultimate hub for mind wandering. It's the network that lights up like a Christmas tree when you're daydreaming or stressing about the past or worrying about the future, instead of just focusing on what's right in front of you. Now, the contrast between the groups here is incredible. Using graph theory to measure how interconnected the brain's networks are, researchers found that meditators have a significantly lower connector hub strength originating from that default mode network compared to non-meditators. Simply put, their mind-wandering center has way less influence over the rest of the brain. The meditators literally have less mental noise, which lets their cool, prefrontal system stay firmly in the driver's seat.
And why does this matter for you and me? Well, the study measured something called orienting attention. Basically, that's your ability to catch yourself when your mind starts to wander and then quickly yank your focus back to the present moment. The researchers found a direct correlation here. People with stronger prefrontal connectivity and that lower default mode network integration had much faster orienting attention. Their cool system was literally just faster at reining in the distractions of the hot system. It's like having better brakes on your car.
And finally, section 5, strategies to master your mind. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, that's great for someone who's spent thousands of hours meditating on a mountain, but what about me? Well, the really good news here is that biology is absolutely not destiny. Willpower is a highly learnable cognitive tool. You can start training your cool brain right now. Walter Mischel, the architect of the Marshmallow Experiment, outlined 3 proven strategies to manually activate your cool brain whenever you face temptation. Step 1, distract yourself. Literally remove the temptation from the room, or purposefully think about something completely different. Keep your brain busy. Step 2, reframe your thinking. Let's say you crave a cigarette. Don't sit there dreaming about the nicotine rush. Force your cool brain to focus on the objective scientific features, like the toxic chemicals you'd be inhaling. And step 3, visualize the negative consequences. Fun fact, Mischel himself used to be a heavy smoker, and he used this exact strategy to quit. He vividly pictured his future self suffering the devastating health consequences of a lifetime of smoking. He strongly identified with his future self to cool down his present desires. It's a total game changer.
I want to share this incredibly empowering quote from Michel himself. He wrote, "No matter how bad you are at resisting temptations, there are ways to enhance self-control if you're motivated to use them." Look, changing cemented habits is never easy. It definitely takes work. But all this research proves that we don't just have to be victims to our impulses. We can learn these strategies, we can strengthen our neural networks, and we can be active agents in how our own lives play out.
So let's wrap up with this final thought. Take a hard look at your own daily habits, your goals, and your biggest distractions. What is the one marshmallow in your life right now that you could reframe using your cool brain today? Find it, try out the strategies we talked about, and start rewiring your attention. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, stay focused and keep learning.